I sat there in the quiet suite in the heart of Milwaukee, the phone screen lighting up repeatedly. My heart beat slowly, no longer hurried, no longer trembling. All that remained was a cold calmness like the surface of a frozen lake in a Wisconsin winter, perfectly still on top, but beneath it an abyss swallowing everything. Just a few hours earlier, Clayton, my brother, had been lounging back in the leather armchair, gently swirling his craft stout, wearing that smug grin I knew all too well. "I've got it all locked down now, little sis. The jewelry, the lake house, the accounts. Thanks for making it so easy." His voice was sweet, like honey mixed with dark beer, but I could clearly taste the bitterness of contempt. Next to him, Frances. My mother giggled, her eyes sparkling as if she'd just hit the jackpot. She patted Clayton's hand, whispering something that made them both burst into laughter. They thought they had won. They thought I was still the naive little sister, always smiling and staying out of the way, while they manipulated Dad's craft beer empire into whatever they wanted. They had no idea that over the past months, I had been silently watching, silently gathering, silently preparing. Dad passed away suddenly 2 years ago, leaving a clear will, everything divided equally among the three of us, mother and children. But Frances and Clayton had been secretly moving. They persuaded Grandma to sign powers of attorney, gradually transferring assets into their names, under the excuse of better management. They told me it was to protect me because I didn't understand anything about business. They laughed behind my back when I asked about the joint accounts. They held family meetings without inviting me, deciding to sell parts of the brewery without my signature. And the climax came last week. They announced that the lake house, the place where Dad and I used to fish every weekend, where he taught me how to brew beer for the first time, now belonged entirely to Clayton. "You don't need it. You're still young. You'll have your own house someday," Frances said, her voice falsely gentle. I cried that night. Not because of the loss, but because I realized they had never truly seen me as family. I was just an obstacle in their path to seizing everything. But they forgot one thing: Dad didn't just teach me how to brew beer. He taught me how to protect what was mine. Before he passed, he had secretly set up a separate trust fund for me with his own lawyer, one that Clayton and Frances had never known about. He had suspected them for a long time, and he was right. I had been meeting that lawyer for months in complete secrecy, gathering evidence, forged documents, shady transfers, emails they sent each other, plotting how to remove me from the picture. I waited for the perfect moment. And that moment was today. I hit send on the final message, a PDF file from the lawyer attached with the court case number. An order to temporarily freeze all joint accounts, properties, and disputed assets pending investigation into inheritance fraud. No drama, no threats, just the cold truth. Only 8 minutes. First came the bank notification: family trust accounts temporarily frozen due to court order. Then the first call from Clayton rang. I didn't answer. The text followed right after: "What the hell are you doing? Call me right now." The second call, the third. Frances called, her voice trembling in the voicemail. "Sweetie, Mom doesn't understand. Why are you doing this to our family?" I read each incoming text like a flood pouring in. From anger. "Are you insane? This is my money." To panic. "The bank won't let me withdraw. The lake house has been sealed." Then desperation. "I'm sorry. Let's talk, honey. Mom was wrong." I smiled for the first time that day. Not a shallow victory smile, but a deep sense of liberation. The years of being looked down on, pushed aside, falsely loved just to be manipulated, all of it vanished in those frantic lines of text. They thought I was weak. They thought I would stay silent forever, always yielding because family comes first. They didn't know that in that silence I had become someone else. Stronger, colder, more ready than ever. Now their perfect plan was crumbling piece by piece. The lawyer said the lawsuit would drag on, but the evidence was overwhelming: fraud, abuse of power of attorney, concealment of assets. Clayton could lose everything. Francis could face criminal charges. And me, I would take back what was mine, not just the money, but justice. The phone kept ringing. I turned off the ringer, took a sip of red wine, the kind Dad had saved for a special day. The flavor spread warm and bittersweet. This was my special day. If this moment gives you goosebumps, if you're trembling with anger and excitement, wanting to know the rest from the even darker secrets, the twists that even I didn't expect, then smash that like button right now. Your favorite part is coming, when they get on their knees begging, and I decide whether to forgive or not. Comment below, what would you do if you were me? Subscribe and hit the bell so you don't miss the next episode. The story is just starting to heat up. A few months earlier, after Dad passed away 2 years ago, I decided to stay in the family home on the outskirts of Milwaukee because I thought it was the right thing to do. We were all grieving in our own ways, and I believed that blood should stick together through times like this. The house was spacious: 5 bedrooms, a finished basement, with Dad's old brewing memorabilia hanging all over the walls, but it never felt empty with Clayton and Mom still there. Clayton almost immediately stepped up as CEO of Jensen Brewing Group. He moved into Dad's old corner office downtown, began signing off on every major decision, and made it clear that the company was now his to run. I didn't fight it. I had never been deeply involved in the day-to-day operations. I managed a few small investments on the side, nothing flashy, just enough to keep me occupied. Mom backed him on everything. Whenever I brought up ideas about the business, even simple ones, she would smile, wave them away, and say, "Clayton knew best." At dinner, he would drop little digs my way, that I wouldn't understand distribution contracts, that the craft beer world was too cutthroat for someone who hadn't grown up in it like he had. Mom would nod in agreement, adding that I was better suited to other things. It hurt, but I swallowed it. They were still family. One evening, I went into Dad's old study looking for some insurance paperwork we needed for the estate accountant. The room hadn't changed much. Same oak desk, same shelves full of awards from beer festivals. I pulled open a drawer and accidentally knocked over the small digital recorder Dad used to keep for quick notes. It hit the floor, turned itself on, and started playing. Clayton's voice came through crystal clear. He was laughing low and confident. "She still thinks the trust is ironclad. We can amend it quietly, just call it incapacity or forge the addendum. She'll sign whatever we put in front of her." Then Mom's voice, calm and agreeing. "Ruby's always been naive about money. Once it's done, everything will route through the new entity. No one will question it." They kept talking shell companies, shifting assets, making sure my share evaporated without a trace. Clayton wrapped it up with, "By the time she figures it out, it'll be too late. She won't have a clue how to fight it." I stood there frozen, the recorder still playing faint background noise from their conversation. My own mother, my own brother, planning to cut me out as if I were some outsider they needed to dispose of. The betrayal hit harder than anything I'd felt since Dad's funeral. It wasn't just about the money. It was them deciding I didn't belong in the family legacy at all. I picked up the device, stopped it, and placed it back exactly where it had been. My hands didn't shake. I made sure of that. That night, I lay awake replaying every detail in my mind. They thought I was clueless because I never pushed back. Fine. I would use that against them. The next morning, I started small. I photographed a few trust documents I had access to, nothing obvious. I already had a separate investment account from years of quiet trading money they dismissed as my little hobby. I moved a portion into a new structure slowly and untraceably. Then, I quietly filed a change of residence with the post office and county records, just enough to trigger the protective clause Dad had cleverly built into the original trust without raising any red flags. I didn't confront them. I didn't cry or yell. I smiled at breakfast like nothing had changed, listened to Clayton brag about his latest distribution deal, and watched Mom beam at him with pride. Inside me, something hardened. They wanted to play it this way. I would play along until I no longer had to. A few weeks after I quietly moved out of the house, a few weeks after I quietly moved out and booked a long-term room at a low-key hotel downtown. The days settled into a routine that kept my mind sharp. Mornings started with coffee from the in-room machine and checking my small trades on the laptop. Nothing big, just steady moves in index funds and a couple of craft beverage stocks I'd followed for years. It wasn't about getting rich quick. It was about staying calm, proving to myself I could handle money without anyone watching over my shoulder. My phone stayed mostly silent. Clayton sent the occasional text asking where I was, saying Mom missed me. I kept replies short and vague. They didn't push too hard, probably thought I was just taking space after everything with Dad. Then, one afternoon, a message came from a number I didn't recognize. Ruby Jensen. This is Gloria Ramirez. I worked for your father for over 40 years. I know your maiden name hasn't changed. We should talk. Somewhere private. Gloria, Dad's longtime assistant. After he died, Clayton had moved her to a smaller desk, cut her hours, and made it clear her role was shrinking. I remembered her bringing coffee to meetings, keeping every file perfect, always treating me like I belonged, even when Clayton acted like I didn't. I agreed to meet. We picked a quiet cafe near Lake Michigan, the kind of place with old wooden booths and no one paying attention to anyone else. I got there first, ordered black coffee, and watched the door. Gloria arrived right on time, carrying a plain tote bag. She looked older than I remembered, gray hair, pulled back glasses on a chain, but her eyes were sharp. She slid into the booth across from me and didn't waste words. I've been waiting for the right moment, she said, voice low. Your father was good to me. Treated me like family. After he was gone, things changed fast. She reached into the bag and pulled out a small external drive, sliding it across the table. This has copies of emails, bids, internal memos going back years. Bid rigging on city festival contracts, inflated numbers to lock out competitors, payments routed through fake vendors. All tied to accounts Clayton controls now. I stared at the drive. How long have you been keeping this? Since the first time I saw a pattern, she replied. Your dad started clean. But Clayton learned different. And Francis signed off on plenty. There were minority partners before, people your father brought in who asked too many questions. They got bought out cheap or pushed aside. Same playbook they're using now. She paused, looking out toward the lake for a second. I stayed because someone needed to remember how things were supposed to be. Your father would have hated what's happening. The weight of it settled in. This wasn't just about me and some trust amendment. Clayton and Mom had been running schemes for years, cutting out anyone who didn't fall in line. I wasn't the first, and if they succeeded, I wouldn't be the last. Gloria stood to leave. Use it carefully. There's more if you need it. She walked out without looking back. I sat there a while longer, drive in my pocket, coffee going cold. For the first time, the full scale hit me. They weren't just trying to edge me out of an inheritance. They were protecting a whole system built on cutting corners and silencing anyone in the way. 1 month later, Clayton and Francis suddenly invited me to a family reconciliation dinner. 1 month later, Clayton and Francis suddenly invited me to a family reconciliation dinner at Mom's house in the suburbs. I showed up on time, dressed neutral, nothing flashy, just jeans and a sweater. The dining room table was set for 8. Victor Hayes, Clayton's main distribution partner, was already there with his wife and 2 other guys from the local brewing scene. Francis greeted me with a big hug like nothing had ever been wrong. Clayton clapped me on the shoulder, saying how good it was to have everyone together again. Dinner started normal enough talk about the latest summer festival's new craft lines coming out. Then Clayton steered the conversation his way. He poured himself another glass and launched into a story. You know, Ruby here once asked me if distribution contracts were the same as home delivery apps. He paused for effect, grinning around the table. Thought we were just shipping cases like online shopping. Cute, right? Laughter rippled through the guests. Victor chuckled loudest. Francis joined in, patting my hand like it was all in good fun. Clayton kept going. She's always been more Dad's shadow than part of the actual business. Better at hobbies than understanding how we lock in those city event exclusives. More laughs. Someone asked for details and Clayton obliged, spinning it bigger how I supposedly mixed up keg margins with grocery coupons once. All made up, but it landed perfectly. The table treated it like harmless family teasing, except it wasn't. It was him reminding everyone I didn't belong in the room. I smiled through it, nodded at the right moments, even laughed once to keep it light. Inside, the humiliation burned, but I locked it down. I excused myself midway through dessert, saying I needed air. No one pushed. A few days after that, Clayton left for a quick trip to Chicago, some supplier meetings he couldn't miss. I still had a key to the house. No one had asked for it back. That night, I drove over after dark, parked down the block, and let myself in through the side door. The place was quiet. I went straight to Clayton's old home office, now his main workspace when he wasn't downtown. His laptop sat open on the desk, not even password locked this time. I plugged in a clean drive and started copying folders, email archives, contract drafts, spreadsheets with vendor notes that didn't match public bids. It took 20 careful minutes. I double-checked nothing looked disturbed. Then I moved to Francis's filing cabinet in the adjacent den. She kept paper copies of everything old school. I photographed pages showing payments to consulting firms that only existed on paper transfers timed right after city contract awards. My heart stayed steady, but adrenaline kept my focus razor sharp. Every file went back exactly as found, drawers closed at the same angle, papers aligned. I was out in under an hour drive, tucked away, house locked behind me. Driving back downtown, the city lights blurring past, I felt the shift. They thought that dinner had put me in my place. Instead, it gave me the opening I needed. The evidence was piling up piece by piece, and they had no idea. In the 2 months that followed, they launched a full campaign to play perfect family. Clayton started calling every week, suggesting casual dinners, just the three of us at local spots downtown. Francis sent flowers once, then a designer watch I'd mentioned years ago with a note about how proud she was. We were moving past rough patches. They invited me to the house more often, cooking Dad's old recipes, reminiscing like everything was healed. One weekend, they even asked Emily Carter, my closest friend since college, to join us for brunch. Clayton charmed her with stories about the company's growth, while Francis squeezed my arm and told Emily how relieved she was that I was coming around. Emily smiled politely, but I caught her side glances. The real push came during those meals. Clayton would slide papers across the table, amendments to the trust framed as necessary for company stability. He'd explain how signing over a portion would free up capital, keep jobs secure, benefit everyone long term. Francis backed him every time, saying it was what Dad would have wanted, that families should support each other without complications. I nodded, said I'd think about it, asked for copies to review. They never pressured hard in the moment, just enough to make refusal feel ungrateful. Meanwhile, I met with Sarah Lawson, an attorney who specialized in family business disputes. We set up layered structures compliant with the original trust clauses Dad had written, gradual transfers of my legitimate share into separate accounts, time to avoid alerts, all documented perfectly. Money moved quietly, a percentage here, a distribution there. Sarah handled the filings, nothing traceable back without serious digging. Emily pulled me aside after one of those brunches. We met for coffee the next day, just us. She didn't mince words. Clayton's asking me questions about you, where you're staying, if you're seeing anyone, and Francis keeps texting me, thanking me for helping bring you back. It feels off. Like they're boxing you in. She was right. The constant invitations, the gifts, the subtle guilt, it all tightened like a net. My own mother turning every conversation into a pitch for me to give up what was mine. Clayton watching my reactions too closely. The pressure built daily, making the hotel feel smaller, the city closer. I stayed quiet on the outside. Told them I was considering the papers needed time. Inside, I kept building. Gloria forwarded scanned emails in small batches, more vendor discrepancies, off-book payments. I added them to the growing drive, cross-referencing with what Sarah needed for the legal side. The weight of it pressed harder each week. Family dinners that used to feel forced now felt suffocating. Francis's hugs lingered too long. Clayton's smiles carried expectation. I was surrounded by people who shared my blood but wanted me diminished. The isolation grew even with Emily's warnings ringing clear, a few months into what they thought was their winning plan. News broke quietly. At first, Lydia Hayes filed for divorce from Victor. No public statement, just court records that leaked into industry chatter. Word spread fast in Milwaukee's tight brewing circles. She'd uncovered irregularities in company finances, and proof Victor had been involved with Clayton's executive assistant for over a year. Victor reacted immediately. He pulled his investment from 2 joint expansion projects, citing personal reasons in emails that everyone read between the lines. Phone calls stopped getting returned. Meetings got canceled. The fallout snowballed. Major bar chains that carried Jensen labels started reviewing contracts. One regional group dropped their exclusive deal outright, switching to a competitor out of Madison. Another delayed payments, asking for additional compliance documentation. Rumors about rigged bids for summer festival slots circulated in supplier groups, nothing proven yet, but enough to make buyers nervous. Clayton's texts to me shifted tone. Fewer invitations, more questions about whether I'd heard anything. He complained about Victor abandoning ship at the worst time. Francis called once, voice tight, blaming market changes and disloyal partners. I heard them arguing through the phone when she thought I'd hung up. Clayton accusing her of pushing too hard on certain deals years back, her firing back that he'd been reckless lately. Their confidence cracked in private. Board minutes Gloria forwarded showed emergency sessions, cash flow warnings, lawyers on retainer. Suppliers demanded upfront payment on orders that used to run on 30-day terms. Gloria and I finalized everything during those weeks. We compiled the full package, years of mismatched bids, routed payments, internal notes that tied directly to public contract wins. Sarah reviewed the legal side, making sure submissions stayed anonymous but airtight. We sent it through secure channels to the FBI field office in Milwaukee and the local prosecutor handling public corruption cases. No response came right away, but I knew it landed. Search warrants take time to build. Assets don't freeze overnight. The waiting felt heavy, watching the company fray at the edges while Clayton and Francis scrambled to patch holes they didn't fully understand yet. Big accounts kept pulling back. A statewide restaurant group terminated their distribution agreement, costing millions in projected revenue. Industry events that once featured Jensen banners now listed competitors. Clayton stopped talking expansion. Damage control became the priority. The empire was splitting at the seams, partners distancing contracts, vanishing reputation sliding. They still thought they could salvage it if I just signed the amendments. They had no idea the real storm was already on its way. And then came the day everything collapsed completely. The day I sent that message. The text was simple, a formal notification from Sarah, referencing the case number, confirming my cooperation, and triggering the final protective orders on the remaining joint assets. I hit send from the hotel room, set the phone down, and waited. It didn't take long. News alerts started popping up by evening, federal and local authorities executing search warrants at Jensen Brewing Group headquarters and the family house. Reporters camped outside, cameras rolling as agents carried out boxes. The headlines called it a major public corruption probe, bid rigging on city contracts, tax evasion through offshore entities, years of manipulated awards. Sarah called the next morning. Assets were frozen across the board, company accounts, personal trusts, even the lake house title locked pending forfeiture review. Clayton faced multiple counts. Francis was named in several for signing off on fraudulent filings. Prosecutors projected serious prison time if convicted, plus fines that would wipe out whatever was left. The company folded fast. Creditors forced a fire sale of equipment and inventory. Longtime employees lost jobs overnight. The Jensen name, once proud on festival taps across Wisconsin, became synonymous with scandal. I blocked their numbers the same week, no final calls, no explanations. Any mail went straight to Sarah. I never went back to the house, never attended hearings in person. The distance was absolute. Months later, the whistleblower reward cleared, substantial, earned through Gloria's decades of records and my additions. Combined with the share I'd secured legally, it was more than enough. Gloria retired comfortably on her portion. We partnered to start a small foundation in Milwaukee, focused on women caught in family business disputes, legal aid, financial planning, a safe place to rebuild. We kept it quiet at first, taking cases one by one. Women who'd been pushed aside, manipulated out of their rights, told they didn't understand. They came with folders of documents, stories that echoed mine in different keys. We helped them stand up the same way I'd learned to. Never underestimate someone just because you think they don't get it. Silence can be the sharpest weapon. Justice moves slow, but it arrives. And real family is built on trust, not money or power.